During this presentation, I will discuss the process I went through to research and gather the stories, the obstacles I ran into in the process, introduce you to some of the stories that have been shared, and discuss my next steps in getting the stories out to the intended audiences. The intentions of our truths is for students to relate and identify with other community members, recognize struggles and obstacles they have experienced, see that they are not alone and that everyone has a story to tell. Through videos, blogs, and podcasts, New England College will build relationships, trust, and access for our students to see what resources are available to them, as well as to introduce them to role models and real people that they can reach out to for help in navigating college and student life. The website will also help to foster relationships and sharing among faculty, staff, and administration. Where did this idea come from? Through the courses I've taken in the Higher Education Administration program at New England College, paired with my on-the-job experience in higher education, I have learned about student development theory and have been exposed to the major retention issue that colleges face. This all had me thinking, how do we retain our students and motivate them to persist through the various barriers that stand in their paths to graduation? The average 6-year retention rate for colleges is around 50%. Relationship building has a direct impact on student retention. Proactively addressing student issues while introducing them to New England College's faculty and staff will develop a familiarity with New England College environment and community for the students and the foundation for relationships to develop. The theories behind the concept of this project are Tinto's student retention theory and Bean and Eaton's 1995 retention model. Both of these theories state that relationship building has a direct impact on student retention. The idea of proactively addressing student issues while introducing them to New England College's faculty and staff will develop a familiarity with the New England College environment and community for the students and the foundation for relationships to develop. According to Tinto, students enter college with the pre-existing characteristics that directly affect their likelihood of persisting, as well as indirectly through their individual goals and institutional commitments. Tinto's model illustrates that students engage in a continual and interactive process through which they will assess how their values align with the values of the institution. As they simultaneously evaluate the feedback they receive on their social and academic achievement, students determine their levels of social integration based on their interactions with peers, sense of fit within the student culture of an institution, and engagement with formal student organizations. Assessment of academic integration is marked by feedback from the faculty on academic performance, along with the students' comfort level when interacting with faculty members regarding educational issues. These evaluations lead students to some judgment about their social and economic integration. Based on their assessment of social and academic integration, students revisit their initial goals and institutional commitments and decide whether to proceed with an institution. In Bean and Eaton, students enter with characteristics over which we have little control. Interactions occur between students and the institution in many forms and on multiple occasions, but these interactions do not automatically integrate students into the environment. Students determine the extent to which they belong during these interactions. Now I'll go a little bit into the research process that I went through. The information gathering, the preparation, and then the action items. In order to gather information and make sure that the stories that I was asking for were relevant to our New England College students, and that I had support from senior team to proceed with the project, I first met with the VPAA to get both buy-in, support from him, and he also assisted in generating some ideas for me. I then met, based on the recommendations from the VPAA, with the Director of Academic Advising to find out the reasons that our students give here at NEC for leaving. After that, I met with the Director of the First Year Programs, which is one of the places where I believe these stories will have a direct impact on the retention of our students. And from there, I went and met with the Director of Diversity here at New England College. All of these folks gave great insight into their jobs with students and into ideas to help me out with the Capstone project. The next thing that I did in preparation for this project was I researched student retention theories such as Tinto and I researched how to make podcasts and storyboard development. I then developed questions for interviews and direction to help the community members to develop their stories. The next step in the process was to actually put into action my plan. I first reached out to multiple community members around campus to ask for their stories. This is one obstacle that I faced. It was a timing thing, and a lot of folks agreed to help, but due to scheduling and just the actual ask for stories was difficult for folks. And those who shared stories did comment afterwards how difficult it actually was to come up with something that was both relevant, but also to kind of go to that place where you're vulnerable and sharing something that other folks may not just know about you. And after getting some of the stories and following up to have some material, I met with the marketing manager here at New England College because I do believe that these stories and the picture that you can paint with them for external potential students or their families has a great deal of marketability. And my initial intention was to try to get these put on the New England website. One of the obstacles that I faced here was that we're in the process of redeveloping our website. So the marketing director was on board and excited about the idea of the project, but actually getting the content onto the website is set to be reviewed in the future as we have our new website up and have a better place to actually house the material. The next step in the process was to reach out and call for stories. I emailed New England College staff and faculty a variety of different people in different positions. I'd follow up multiple times due to busy schedules, so getting the actual documents back was a bit of a challenge. Originally, I intended to record the stories in person, but decided that people might be more comfortable recording themselves. So that was a change that I came about in the process. I also originally intended for people to tell their stories directly to the camera or recording device, but found that some participants found it easy to share their stories in an interview style or a conversational way with me. Some obstacles that I ran into, the main ones were the timing of people's availability and remembering to actually go ahead and record the stories. Some folks thought that the email that I sent was spam, which was an issue. And the reason I think maybe I didn't hear back from some other folks. There was also some technical issues moving the files from one place to another, or the participants emailing them or getting the documents to me. And also the availability of space on the New England College website at this point for the stories to be shared. We are redoing the website so in the near future, so timing to incorporate the stories at this time and the current one would be a bit of a waste of effort. As for next steps in this process, I intend to contact the director of first year programs and let her know that I have a usable collection of stories available if they fit into the curriculum for the Bridges courses, and also if they can be used in any other presentations or just distributed out to students. And I will also continue discussions with the marketing department as the new website is developed, and also to find out ways that the stories can be used in marketing. Frank Jones, an associate professor at a practice in criminal justice at NEC, shared his story by writing down a blog post. I will read some excerpts from what he wrote. My story begins with 3 words: improvise, adapt, and overcome. The origin of these words stems from language used by members of the United States Marine Corps and a deep-rooted tradition in the lifestyles of Marines to encounter any environment and any situation they may be placed into. I first heard these 3 words as a young man from my uncle, long since deceased, who had served in the U.S. Marine Corps in Southeast Asia during the Vietnam conflict. He had explained to me that these words described having to be always flexible for anything that life throws at you. These words meant a lot to my uncle and embedded themselves into me as a mantra for my life and goals. He then wrote, I began my journey to satisfy my desire for post-education and military service, successful career in law, enforcement during my high school years. Similar to many of today's students, I had hundreds of questions and concerns. Where do I start? How do I start? What must I improvise to guarantee my success? Will I be able to adapt? How do I overcome any specific challenges? Growing up in a less than wealthy family, I knew that financial resources were going to be one of the more significant challenges to my goal. This is a common factor with many potential or aspiring students, and how to overcome it required much forethought from me. So I opted to join the military first and take advantage of the educational benefits that were offered. This is clearly not a path for everyone. Most want to get a start on college education almost immediately after finishing high school. Neither path is right or wrong. It's individual choice, but one that requires the ability to improvise, adapt, and overcome. Then he says, in closing this brief but sincere story of one part of my life, I offer this advice to any students, especially at NEC. Improvise, adapt, and overcome. Thousands of NEC pilgrims have done this. Learn to connect with all the resources available at Pilgrim Nation and adapt to your college experiences with zest. Stay focused on why you came to NEC and to your future career goals. Improvise your lifestyle to meet those goals and overcome any obstacle. Stay disciplined and remind yourself every day that just like a Marine, you can do it. Develop your story and one that perhaps someday you will reflect upon your successes and share them with others. Hi, my name is Becky Green and I am the project coordinator at NEC. I chose to write down my story and will share now with you some excerpts from what I wrote. I look back now and see that I never learned how to study or even how to go to school. Probably sounds strange to most people, but it is true. Then I said, I realized that I wanted to be successful in school and that this required that I put in time and commitment. I realized that I did not want to work at the deli I was working at for the rest of my life. So I looked at the courses I had done well in and what I needed to graduate and decided to pursue a degree in English with a minor in creative writing. I did this with the help of an academic advisor. To matriculate, enroll in school full-time, I had to meet with an advisor. He helped me to plan the courses I needed to take and to find a faculty advisor. I found that I enjoyed the courses I took my junior and senior year. I committed to going to class, which made the work more interesting, and the anxiety that came from not going to class much less.
But my school experience was horrible. If you weren't a student who got A's and you didn't come from a rich family, you were often thought of as somebody who the teachers weren't going to spend much time with, or certainly not somebody that was going to achieve much. So I lived up to those expectations. I got C's in most of my classes. I didn't want to be at school. I really enjoyed the other activities that I was doing, like dance and up with people, and there were just so many other things I enjoyed, but school just was not it. So I didn't do well. And as you all know, when it's time to go to college, usually the guidance counselors talk with you about where you should go and the kind of school that's going to be best for you and all of that. So I was called in by my guidance counselor, and he succinctly said to me that the only thing that I'd be good for is having babies, and I shouldn't even go to school. And I left that meeting thinking, who are you to tell me that? But I think it was probably the right kick in the butt that I needed at the time, because I just really wasn't making much of myself. And so I decided at that very moment that I was going to prove him wrong.
When I first graduated from high school, like many students, I did not have any idea really what I wanted to do. I enjoyed science, but I also enjoyed arts, especially performing arts, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do. When I first went to college, which was right out of high school, rather than do an undeclared major or whatnot, my parents felt that it was important that I major in something and something I could make a living at. So when I first went to college, I majored in physics. And I think this was largely due to the fact that I had a really good physics teacher in high school that kind of turned me on to it a little bit. But after a couple of semesters at college taking physics courses, I realized, yeah, maybe that really isn't the major for me. And so I decided, after much thinking, that I was going to change my major, which felt like a really big deal. In hindsight, it really wasn't. But I changed my major, and I changed my major to chemical engineering, which is a mouthful. And after a couple of semesters of that, I realized that also was not something that I really wanted to do. And so here I am now, almost 2 years through my college career. I've already majored in a couple of different things, and still haven't really felt like I had found my path.
NEC, and I got there, and it was tricky being a transfer student. I didn't know where to find my friend niche. They were all first-year students, and I wanted to be involved with the upperclassmen more, but the humans I found in that first-year class of students were the best humans I've ever found in my life, and they are still my friends to this day. Going to NEC, I studied elementary education. I'm one of those rare people who loves the arts and thought it would be more practical to get an ed degree. So instead of chasing my dream, I decided to do something practical.
And it was really kind of embarrassing. I'm not sure why now as I look back at that. And I never explained to anybody what on my floor, what the issue was, or what was going on. The RA knew, some staff in the building, like the hall director knew. But I really disconnected myself from the rest of the floor. And didn't attend floor meetings. I pretty much just went to class and came back and kind of isolated myself in my room. And really because I just didn't know how to manage it, didn't know how to deal with it. I was kind of disappointed that nobody reached out to me. I was really more embarrassed than to explain to folks what was going on or what I needed. And it was really I would say, a pretty traumatic time during my college career. I still did well in my grades.
So, in full disclosure, I was sexually molested my whole high school career, and it really distracted me from how I pursued my academics. Instead, I pursued things that took my mind off of everything. So I didn't do any work, really, in high school. And my guidance counselors were very much like, I don't know what you're going to do because there's no colleges that's going to accept you. So by the time graduation rolled around and I graduated, amazingly enough, and I really thought about kind of what are my next steps. I'm not going to college, but I didn't want to just go into the workforce. I mean, I didn't just want to be a lifeguard for the rest of my life, and I didn't want to. So a friend of mine had joined the Marines during my junior year in high school, and he left as like I think about it, like he left as a boy, came back as a man, and I was just kind of like, what is that all about? So I made one call to a recruiter and joined the service instead.
Also growing up with a disability, I think my mother was also like fearful of how am I going to be accepted. I went to a very small school, went in high school, so I graduated with about 42 kids. So it wasn't like a big deal, like I was just like everyone else, so she kind of knows about that. But like I said, I think going to a Catholic school and a community that was built there, awesome.
By socialization over studying, and I ended up with just over a 2.0 GPA. I decided at that point that I hated learning biology and chemistry. I loved the practical application of veterinary care. I loved taking care of the animals. I enjoyed all of that, but I absolutely hated learning about cell structure. There was nothing interesting. So I went to my advisor, and I remember him looking at me and saying, so what are you going to do? And I thought back to my composition and philosophy classes and thought, well, I really enjoyed those. I enjoyed reading, I enjoyed writing, I enjoyed discussing, so maybe I would just be an English major. So I told him, oh, I want to be an English major. And he said, oh, okay. You just want to wear Birkenstocks and go teach a class, huh? And I remember saying to him, I will never teach It is not at all what I'm interested in. And I was very adamant in that moment. I really did not want to teach at all.
To access the full versions of the stories shared by NEC community members, please use the link below. Thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation. If you would like any additional information, you can reach me at beckygreen@rgreen@nec.edu.